An exclusive report has unearthed homophobic and shocking past comments made by Liberal incumbent candidate Ryan Turnbull.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made his second podcast appearance during the campaign to discuss his policies, family life, and the future he envisions for Canada.
A pro-NDP group bust out activists to stage a protest outside of North Island Powell River Conservative candidate Aaron Gunn's campaign office. Hello Canada, it's Wednesday, April 16th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Noah Jarvis.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. A new report by Juno News unearthed a conversation between Liberal incumbent candidate Ryan Turnbull and his friends. In a social media post, the Liberal MP used the F slur in a bizarre public comment about homosexuality, alongside sexually graphic language, including mention of, quote, orifices. Turnbull has not responded to questions from Juno News, nor has he disputed the authenticity of the thread the story relies on. The post dated June 1st, 2008 shows Turnbull, now a sitting MP and a prominent ally in Mark Carney's push to take over the Liberal Party, posing with another man in front of an Eiffel Tower backdrop. The caption is followed by a thread of comments that mock gay men while blending crude sexual innuendo with verbal abuse targeted at the gay community. Turnbull wrote, quote, gay men in denial won't be ashamed of their own perversity. The shocking receipts are available exclusively on Juno News. Whether Turnbull remains a Liberal candidate in the upcoming election now becomes a test of how seriously Mark Carney takes his relationship with the LGBT community. So, Noah, has Carney parted ways with any other candidates this election?
Yes, he has, and the candidate selection for the Liberals and the Conservatives to an extent, but for the Liberals, it has definitely been a problem that has led to the Liberal candidate Carney to have to face some serious questions. For example, in Markham Unionville, it was revealed that Paul Chiang, a Liberal candidate and a former police officer, had suggested that his conservative opponent be, sent back to China, and that people collect a bounty that the People's Republic of China had placed on his head, basically because he had been a vocal proponent of freedom and democracy in China for the people of Hong Kong and against the many cruel and authoritarian acts that the People's Republic of China has committed in the past decades that they've been in power. It seems as if it took a while for Mark Carney to come to terms with the fact that he had to drop Paul Chiang. A lot of people were confused as to why it took so long for Carney to drop him, but he did drop him. And the candidate that replaced Paul Chiang also has ties with people who are deeply tied with the People's Republic of China. So they didn't really avoid that problem there, dropping that candidate. But they also had to drop Rod Loyola, a former NDP MLA in Alberta, because of past comments he had made supporting Hamas and Hezbollah. And he had refused to retract those comments, which I think is very worrying and concerning, especially for many Jewish Canadians who see many of the frequent hate marches in Canadian cities as a threat to their safety and security and to the interests that they hold near and dear. This example of Ryan Turnbull, it is an egregious example of just, homophobic remarks. These are remarks that, if you were to make them, you definitely shouldn't make them in public. And Ryan Turnbull, I guess, did not have that sense of mind to keep that such, dirty talk off of the internet that it could come back and bite him. And I guess it is coming back to bite him, although the Liberals have not dropped him as a candidate yet. And he has served 2 terms as a Liberal MP. So he hasn't faced any repercussions for this yet. And the Liberal Party has not responded to Juno News' request for comment. So it remains to be seen what the Liberals will do with him. But at the end of the day, this is a blatant contradiction in the values that the Liberal Party claims to champion. The Liberal Party, especially under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has been a champion of the quote unquote rights of LGBT LGBTQ people, and Mark Carney has also tried to take on this mantle. However, I think a lot of Liberal Party supporters might view this example as something that would dissuade them from voting for the Liberals. And it's not as if, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been actively shooing away homosexual people who might want to vote for the Conservatives. A lot of people who are gay work for the party and vote for the party, and it's no difference with the other parties. And I think that many Canadians who view, politicians saying these sorts of comments as a non-starter, they're going to view other parties as a more amenable choice for them in come election day. So I think that Ryan Turnbull has to apologize for these comments, especially since he claims to be a champion of the LGBTQ community. And it would really be shocking if Mark Carney also didn't try to distance himself from Ryan Turnbull. But the Liberals have tried to do a lot to cover the backs of people who have rose up the ranks of the Liberal Party. This can be viewed from the Buttons scandal story, where Liberal operatives had basically planted fake buttons trying to deny the possible results of the election and some other weird messages at the Canada Strong and Free Network conference. And those people had not been fired. They had only been reassigned to another portion of the campaign. So it remains to be seen whether or not the Liberals will take accountability for this, and specifically if Ryan Turnbull will decide to drop out of the race. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made his second long-form podcast appearance of the election campaign and discussed U.S. relations, the role of the media, and how the Liberals were copying his policies. Poilievre appeared on The Knowledge Project, a business-oriented show hosted by Shane Parrish, a former Canadian intelligence agent, entrepreneur, and best-selling author. During the hour-and-a-half interview, which aired on Sunday on X, Poilievre spoke about a range of topics. Poilievre started the podcast by dismissing comparisons of his style of politics to U.S. President Donald Trump's. He defended his stance that Canada needs to retaliate against U.S. tariffs so the country, quote, knows its producers will pay for the administration's tariffs against Canada. Despite this, he would first attempt to renegotiate a free trade deal with the U.S. that benefits both countries. Poilievre said he would argue to Trump that a free trade deal between the U.S. and Canada would enable Canada to defend the Arctic, a concern he believes lies at the heart of Trump's tariff threats. To reduce Canada's dependence on the U.S., Poilievre emphasized the need to grow the domestic economy, build pipelines for international exports, and make Canada a more attractive place for investment, something the Liberals have signaled they will not do. He argued that while the Liberals have adopted some conservative-sounding policies, the key difference is sincerity. He noted that the Liberals said they axed the carbon tax, but can easily reverse the regulatory change if they're re-elected, as the law is still in place. Poilievre also pledged tax cuts for companies that produce goods while lowering emissions. He argued that the Liberal carbon price scheme is counterproductive, making it cheaper to import goods from countries with higher emissions than buying products made in Canada. Poilievre made the case that every Canadian citizen would benefit from successful energy projects. Energy is Canada's #1 export, and its success will mean the Canadian dollar will have more purchasing power. The taxes paid by the industry will help pay off the debt and for government services, meaning future generations will have less of a bill to pay. Poilievre also clarified his opposition to Canadian politicians being members of the World Economic Forum.
One of the differences between you and your opponent, Mr. Carney, is you've said no to the WEF, whereas he's heavily integrated into that. Why do you have such strong feelings on that, and how does that impact everyday Canadians?
I just think it's an organization that has a very top-down mentality. I don't believe in top-down. I don't believe that there's this sort of group of globe-trotting experts that can tell us how to live our lives, that can, who can tell us which industry should go up and which should go down, what cars we should drive and what words we should speak and how our money should be spent. I really believe in distributed decision-making, personal freedom, letting people live their own lives and chart their own course.
He also said regular blue collar Canadians often have a better understanding of things than globalist elites who occupy the WEF. He called out Carney for promoting money printing in 2021, claiming it wouldn't drive up inflation, while average Canadians were saying it would. Poilievre vowed to repeal liberal censorship laws and media bailouts, saying free speech is the best cure to hold governments accountable. So, Cosmin, Poilievre also appeared on another podcast just a few weeks ago. It seems as if he has been taking a different strategy in trying to articulate his message and in dealing with the media. Will appearing on podcasts like this pay off for Poilievre, and is he reaching a new audience by doing these?
So yeah, Noah, you're right. It's definitely a thought out strategy. We saw it actually play out in the US presidential election, where US President Donald Trump also appeared on major podcasts, including Joe Rogan and others in the United States in the lead up to that election. I think this is just the reality we live in with digital media now, and politicians are adapting to this because a lot of people, especially young people, get their information from long form videos, interviews, podcasts, etc. And especially video podcasting, if you look at the breakdown of statistics, it's usually younger people aged 18 to 34, which Pierre Poilievre is actually performing very well with and bucking trends of past conservative candidates. The 18 to 34 age group is generally swinging conservative this time around. And while I don't think he's reaching a new audience, he is reaching that audience directly by doing these podcasts. Unfortunately, Canada doesn't have the same podcasting ecosystem as the United States. And because of the current political climate, it might not be that popular for Poilievre to show up on a huge, podcast with millions of viewers like Joe Rogan because it is US based. So he has to do these Canadian podcasts, which unfortunately do not have as big of an audience, but they do have a more targeted audience here in Canada. North Island Powell River Conservative candidate Aaron Gunn has expressed alarm to learn that a pro-NDP group bussed anti-forestry activists to protest his campaign over the weekend. Gunn took to social media after media reports indicated that protesters were being bussed to the area. Gunn wrote, quote, "Very disturbed but not surprised to see reports of my NDP opponent bussing in activists from Victoria to protest outside my office in Campbell River. Even more outrageous, this protest was being advertised and supported by anti-forestry groups, even though forestry is the bedrock of so many North Island communities, including Campbell River." In Gunn's post to X, he shared an article from My Campbell River Now, a local news publication. The publication said that the protest on April 12th was organized by Stop the Vote Split North Island Powell River, the North Island Network, and the Cathet Anti-Racist Society. However, the original version of the article claimed the event was organized by NDP candidate Tennealle Johnston, who allegedly brought in a busload of supporters from Victoria. One attendee, Stephanie Abbott Slater, said that there was a bus for people, but that it was organized by a grassroots organization, not a political party. The article was hastily edited to remove the claim that Johnston organized a rally. Johnston was in Port Hardy, hosting a meet and greet with her supporters at the time, while Gunn was in Comox Valley for his own rally. The protests included guest speakers such as Darren Blaney, the elected chief of the Homalco First Nations, and husband of outgoing NDP MP Rachel Blaney. So Noah, obviously this group, it's called Stop the Vote Split. They're concerned about vote splitting on the left. And while this is evident in this particular riding, I don't think the NDP is really splitting the vote federally because when you see the NDP vote, it's completely collapsed. and that's why the Liberals are riding so high. But Noah, what are the NDP's prospects in this riding, and what does the national poll look like as well?
Well, the NDP are polling second in this riding, which on the surface might seem like a good thing. But if you dive deeper into the numbers, you would see that the NDP's prospects have gone down significantly in recent months. In 2019 and 2021, the NDP was able to win this riding pretty handedly. They beat the Conservatives by a 4-point margin in 2019 and a 3-point margin in 2021. The Liberals not really competitive in this riding. However, the NDP has seen a significant drop in their support nationally and in every region of Canada, quite frankly. If you look at the numbers nationally, the NDP, they're polling at about 9%, if you aggregate all the different polls that have been coming out, which is really awful for the NDP. I think that is one of their worst showings since the party was first formed from their old days as a social democratic party or Democratic Socialist Party. And specifically in BC, their numbers have tanked. The NDP has always found a healthy amount of support in BC. If, for example, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is MP in BC. However, the NDP, while they were polling at around 26 to 28% before Trudeau resigned in British Columbia, they are now polling at roughly 14 to 15%, which is a halving of their support in British Columbia. This would translate to the Conservatives picking up this riding and picking up the riding in strong fashion. I think that Aaron Gunn, his candidacy as the Conservative candidate there, really helps the Conservatives. He is a star candidate. He helped produce several documentaries that were very popular. Vancouver is Broken, Canada is Broken, that highlighted many of the issues that his riding, his province, his country has been dealing with, and he has gained quite a bit of popularity and support from that. And while the NDP, they gained 39.5% of the vote in this riding in 2021, they're projected to only get 26% of the vote. To the Conservatives projected 46%, according to 338 Canada. And the NDP, they're actually closer to getting third place as the Liberals are creeping up in support. They're being estimated as being able to capture 21% of the votes in the riding. So the NDP, they're definitely desperate to try and capture and retain as many seats as possible, since nationally their support has about halved, and this would translate into one of the most significant losses of seats in the NDP's history. The NDP, they're projected to win in the single digits in seats, potentially even a complete wipeout if some of the polls are overestimating their support. And this would also mean that Jagmeet Singh would lose his seat, and federal leaders losing their seat in the parliamentary system is quite difficult because they often choose safe riding. So the NDP, they're definitely trying to save furniture. They're trying to drum up controversy in Aaron Gunn's riding because he is one of the Conservative Party's star candidates, trying to take him down a peg. But is this strategy going to work? It remains to be seen. Although Aaron Gunn is a strong candidate, he is fighting back against this. And, the fact that the NDP are bussing in supporters to protest him really kind of shows that these protests are a bit artificial. They're artificial, and people aren't really going out with their own concerted energy to go out and protest Aaron Gunn. They're actually being directed by the party, and I think a lot of voters might see this story and think it is a bit repulsive and actually turn against the NDP because of it.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.